Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Javier Guerra. The Biden administration reinstating a Trump-era border policy next month. A federal judge ordered the White House to reinstate the so-called Remain in Mexico policy in good faith. The policy requires asylum seekers to wait in Mexico until their U.S. immigration court date. Mexico is now asking for all cases to be concluded within 6 months. Former President Donald Trump introduced this policy back in 2019, and President Biden suspended it on his first day in office.
The Biden administration says it plans to reinstate a Trump-era border policy next month.
The so-called Remain in Mexico policy forces asylum seekers to wait in Mexico until their U.S. immigration court date. According to a court filing late Thursday, Mexico wants cases to generally conclude within 6 months and ensure that asylum seekers have timely and accurate information about hearing dates and times. Mexico also wants better access to legal counsel and coordination on when and where asylum seekers are returned. Former President Donald Trump introduced the policy back in 2019, but President Biden suspended it on his first day in office.
A federal judge later ordered the Biden administration to reinstate the policy in good faith. The Justice Department says the policy should be in effect around mid-November.
And Congressman, I also want to talk about another misstep, or disaster rather, is Biden's border policy. Now, the Biden administration is set to bring back President Trump's border policy, the Remain in Mexico policy, in the middle of next month. But this is after the Biden company were ordered to reinstate it by a federal judge. Will this make a difference in terms of beginning to secure our border?
It certainly will, and I'm so glad that you said that. The United States Supreme Court actually compelled them to do that. They didn't want to do that. In my role as the ranking member, the highest Republican on the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee, I have advocated for this policy along with a reinstatement of the Trump-era policies to secure the border. Let's be honest with people. We had secured the border. Crossings were low. If we talk to the throngs of people coming over illegally, they're honestly telling people that Joe Biden invited them into this country. They've been told by criminals, coyotes, and cartels that they are welcome here without any problem. We had people from Haiti who were in Brazil and Chile coming over, now are sitting back in Haiti because they were duped. They were duped not only by the cartels, but by the Biden administration. We need a total recalibration, whether it's on the domestic economy, the foreign policy. Think about it. France takes their ambassador away, and clearly on the border. This is a crisis everywhere we look, and the Biden administration tries to change narrative to narrative. Let's face it, the narrative right now is failure. The American people need to demand more.
James Freeman, jump in here.
Yeah, thanks. I'm also kind of wondering about the role of the government of Mexico in all this. There was an interesting piece in the Dallas Morning News this week suggesting that part of the reason why you're seeing this increase in migration is whether it's an overall policy or just kind of a drift. There seems to be less cooperation from the government of Mexico. Is that how you see it?
Yes. As a matter of fact, Mexico has a problem on its southern border. We just received a briefing, non-classified briefing, so I can talk with you about it, from Border Patrol people at the highest levels. Mexico has its own problems. Fortunately, they are sitting down with us now and speaking again. But remember, President Trump did it the right way. He didn't ask Mexico. He told Mexico, look, you're going to do this, or we're going to do this, this, and that. And they understood that. It was good for Mexico. It was good for the United States. And it curbed illegal immigration into this country. Right now, it's porous. They're pouring across. And the worst news is more folks are coming. But yes, Mexico has its own internal problems, and hopefully they will work with us to curb it.
Congressman Chuck Fleischmann, thank you for being here this morning.
It's a pleasure.
Texas is adding manpower and equipment along the Mexican border. The increase in resources comes as a record number of people have been caught illegally crossing into the U.S. this year. KPRC2 investigator Robert Arnold live in the newsroom for us tonight. Robert, you've been covering the border story for years now.
Well, the September numbers have not yet been released, but Border Patrol has already reported more than 1.5 million people have either been caught crossing our southern border illegally or deemed inadmissible to the United States. And Congress Congress remains deadlocked on long-term solutions. State troopers say a woman recently live-streamed her own run from the law. The woman was caught after losing control and crashing her car. Troopers say she was carrying a gun and a whole lot more.
She was arrested for evading, human smuggling, and possession of marijuana.
State troopers say they've been involved in hundreds of cases since March involving drug and human smuggling along our border. Governor Greg Abbott started sending troopers and guardsmen to the border shortly after the number of immigrants caught crossing the border began to spike.
We just have to have the will to enforce the law.
Democratic Congressman from Laredo, Henry Cuellar, co-authored a bill that will see asylum claims settled at the border within days, instead of allowing thousands of migrants to live in the U.S. for years while those claims are pending.
Out of 100 people asking for asylum, 88 to 90% will be rejected.
Cuellar says without this change, problems like the recent surge of Haitian immigrants in Del Rio will continue to happen. Cuellar says the White House knew the large numbers were coming, but indecision hindered preparation.
The White House was getting different opinions. Do this, don't do this, let them in, don't let them in. And they let the situation just, creep on them.
And state troopers say they've started to see a more aggressive posture from smuggling organizations.
They were armed and they had body armor. This has been an increase in activity that we've noticed along the river in Stark County.
Now, Director Escalon says they're not yet sure if that's a response to Texas increasing its presence on the border or because of increased fighting among smuggling operations. Cuellar says he does expect the federal government to reinstate the Remain in Mexico program next month, at least in the Laredo area, but that measure may be short-lived. You can read more about that on click2houston.com. Live in the newsroom, Robert Arnold, KPRC 2 News.
All right, let's talk about what's happening down on the southern border. Two sisters, ages 4 and 6, are found wandering alone near the Arizona-Mexico border. CBP releasing these harrowing images as they work to reunite the girls with their family. The sisters were found in an area that officials say is a popular crossing point for unaccompanied minors.
As the crisis at the southern border continues, Lawrence Jones is getting a first-hand look at the situation on the ground, visiting a train yard in Texas, where troopers catch stowaway illegals.
Lawrence Jones joins us now from Brackettville, Texas. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, good morning, family. We have been here at the border all week showing you this crisis. And part of the reason why we're in this train yard is because this is what a lot of illegals use to get inside of the country. The people that are responding to those illegals trying to enter in the country, the Texas Department of Public Safety's Special Operations Unit. Take a look. For the state of Texas, the border fight is bigger than the physical barrier. It is the tools that the illegals use to get into the country. Trains. And some of them surrender themselves willingly, and the other ones, they run. Who's there to meet them? The Texas Department of Public Safety, DPS.
That train will come in, we'll put a guy in a tower. The guy in the tower will see people sitting in these open top containers, and as the train starts to roll, people are jumping off. And some of the troopers will actually get up top on the train.
We're currently in a train yard in the state of Texas where the Texas Department of Public Safety Special Operations Unit are conducting inspections of this train yard. If you see here, you see a bottle of water right here from migrants illegally entering the country. You see electric lights for them and even clothes, right? Shows the mere desperation they have to get into the country. They hide under the train here, right here, and if you can look right here, you see broken ties. This was once connected, and you wonder how they got the tools to be able to do that. They bring that with them.
Some of them will conceal knives and things like that in their shoes, and they won't always admit to it. Like they'll hide the knife in their shoe, for example.
Yeah, you need to see where they're climb up here. These guys, they were three brave old dudes. They were sitting right here.
And they're right against the wheel.
Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. One bad move.
Wow.
Where are you from?
Honduras.
Honduras? And how long have you been traveling on the train?
I don't know.
You don't know? How long have you gone without getting water? It's okay. DPS has arrested over 1,200 migrants since July for trespassing. And they came from 2 different countries?
Right. They came from Honduras and one from El Salvador.
Okay. They're going to be charged with criminal trespass?
Right. So this particular area right here, this is where we're able to enforce the criminal trespass initiative, which Governor Abbott had launched. And right now, these individuals will be charged with criminal trespass with a state violation.
You're the senior man in charge of Lone Star. Tell me what your instructions are with this mission.
Okay. Sure. The Texas National Guard, we're supporting our law enforcement partners. We are mobilizing additional personnel, equipment, as well as capabilities under the direction of Governor Abbott in order to deal with this crisis.
How bad is it, General?
We're at an inflection point because I think we're out of illegal immigration. It's a mass migration, as you've seen with the caravans that hit Del Rio.
We've already heard that there's going to be another wave of migrants coming this way. Are we prepared to handle that right now with the current resources that we have?
Yes, we are. It's hard to say if you're prepared when you talk about caravans of 60,000. That's a tall feat. However, we're continuing to mobilize additional personnel and equipment and capabilities, well in the thousands.
Thousands of people there. So you're ready for this task?
We are ready.
Lawrence, what?
And guys, after that ride along yesterday, we had the opportunity to also go to the prison where they are processed and get their court date. That one individual that you saw that was emotional and was going through, obviously hadn't gotten food in days and water, had to be transported to the hospital. These trains that they jump on and jump off on, there has been legs amputated, arms, limbs. It is a very dangerous process. And if you talk to the troopers off the record, as well as the Border Patrol that are here on the ground, part of the frustration that they have is the Biden administration is encouraging these folks to come into the country, and these people are just listening to that administration. They think it's pretty cruel for the President of the United States to do that, knowing good and well that they have to enforce the laws that are on the books currently. I'm going to send it back to you guys in New York.
And Lawrence, what's so interesting is Griff is where it starts, in Panama. Yeah. And they're saying the same thing in Panama that they're saying in New Mexico, that they're saying at the border, is that they got the go sign a year ago, that the administration was changing, the opportunity is now, and they're coming here. And
this is
Yeah, go
That's
ahead.
exactly right. And there's about 30,000 folks. We got tips from our sources yesterday when we were talking about, and they're waiting to see which direction are they going to go. Are they going to come here to the Del Rio sector, or are they going to go to the Rio Valley? They think they're going to come here to the Del Rio sector. That's where the Haitians came about 3 weeks ago. So they're saying they anticipate them to come here again. The question is, what is the Biden administration going to do this time? This is their second opportunity to get it right. The first wave, they were warned back in July, and it did absolutely nothing to stop it.
Yeah, our drone team exposed it, and they would have been really caught. Thanks so much, Lawrence. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Great
Lawrence.
stuff.
And keep in mind, he's going to be in office for 3 more years at least. So we're going to continue to see these stories.
Well, when he comes out and gives a 6-minute get a shot speech and then runs away, he never is held accountable. Nobody else asks him these questions.
Nope.
Well, he doesn't answer the questions. The last 2 days, he hasn't taken.
No, but why does he think he has to when he ran a whole campaign from a basement?
Right.
There's never been a moment.
A surge in migration at the U.S.-Mexico border is causing major issues for federal authorities and local officials. Customs and Border Patrol agents say they don't have enough resources to keep up. Republican lawmakers are pointing fingers directly at the Biden administration. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales has more.
It was just this week the Biden administration announced that it's easing COVID-19 travel restrictions on border crossings from both Canada and Mexico. But Republicans up here on Capitol Hill say ever since President Biden took office, the southern border has never been closed.
The Biden administration has moved us in the wrong direction. Not only have they sent a message that our borders are open, they're actually taking sections of the Trump wall and deconstructing them. They're making the situation worse.
How bad is it? Custom and Border Protection documents show since March, at least 160,000 immigrants have been released into the United States by the Biden administration. Plus, since August 6th, almost 32,000 have been paroled, and almost 40,000 have been released on their own recognizance. Sources tell EWTN News Nightly agents have seen a surge of middle-class families migrating from South America. They fly to Mexico, take a cab to the U.S. border, and turn themselves in.
that seemed to be the guiding principle for the Biden administration is whatever Trump did was bad, and so he wanted to undo it. The problem is you got to have your own plan in place.
Senator John Cornyn tells me children are often the victims.
About 20% of the children who are placed with sponsors in the United States are never heard from again. We don't know whether they're being trafficked or abused or recruited into gangs or what.
Republicans say President Biden needs to take a page from the former president's playbook.
This president has sent out a message that our borders are open and amnesty is on its way. So everyone should come. We got to go back and reinstitute President Trump's policies, and it would solve this whole problem.
Like the stay in Mexico policy and end the catch and release program. Both were discontinued on Biden's first day in office. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops opposes enforcement-only immigration policies and supports comprehensive immigration reform.
A man wanted for murder in Mexico has been sent back after he was found in New Mexico. The Border Patrol recently apprehended the 31-year-old near Santa Teresa and learned he had a warrant for homicide. The Border Patrol did not identify the man or provide more information of the case, but they did turn him over to Mexican authorities yesterday at an El Paso border crossing.
Border Patrol trying to reunite two young girls with their family after they were found along the Arizona-Mexico border. The sisters, ages 4 and 6, had only a note with their aunt's contact information. This is coming only a few days after a smuggler was caught on video dropping and leaving a 7-year-old girl at the border after getting her over the 30-foot wall with a rope ladder. Joining me now, Florida Congresswoman, Homeland Security Committee member, and Agriculture Committee member, Kat Cammack. Congresswoman, thank you for being here this morning. You've been to the border 3 times. This is evidence that the Biden administration's policies are allowing people, smugglers, to profit from human suffering.
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. I mean, not only just allowing it, but encouraging it. And when you think about it, Biden's administration is really completing the full trafficking circle for these cartels. They're 100% complicit when it comes to the trafficking that we are witnessing of innocent kids. And as you said, I've been to the border several times, and I have spoken with little kids that have been abused. I have spoken with kids as young as 9, a little girl who was gang raped by cartel members. It's unconscionable, the things that are happening. But on top of that, you have entities like Facebook that have allowed these cartels to advertise their services on their platform. There has been zero retribution, zero accountability, and that is extremely frustrating because you have the cartels that are making out like banshees in this. I mean, it's incredible the amount of money that they're making, an average of $6,000 per individual that they get across. I've stood on the banks of the Rio Grande River and watched at 3 o'clock in the morning as hundreds have poured across, and the National Guard, Texas DPS, Border Patrol, their hands are tied. And thankfully, Texas DPS and Governor Abbott, they're stepping up. They are working to start arresting these individuals that are coming over here because the Biden administration, they're hell-bent on doing anything but enforcing our borders and the laws on the books.
Monica Crowley, jump in here, but the Biden administration, when witnessing this supply chain problem, the ports problem, they jump right on it when they think it's going to hurt them politically. But this border problem, they're just kind of tap dancing around it and not doing anything because they think it benefits them politically. Monica?
Well, in the long term, Dagan, you're exactly right that this will benefit them because they're doing this to flood the zone. They're doing it to flood the country in order to try to get these people eventually on a track to becoming citizens and or at least capable of voting. And they believe that they'll vote Democrat. So this is part of their strategy for a permanent Democrat voting majority. But when you take a look at President Biden's poll numbers, they're cratering across the board, Dagan, but in particular, particular on immigration. So this has been going on for these last 10 months since he's been president, and it's really driving the drag on his poll numbers. So now it is becoming a political liability for them, and that's why you're starting to see a little bit of at least thought in the administration with regard to the return to remain in Mexico policy, excuse me, and maybe some other things. But the damage is already done. You have 1.2 million illegal immigrants who have come in just since January.
Congresswoman Monica was mentioning this, that the Biden administration is set to revive that Remain in Mexico policy in the middle of next month. But this is after it was ordered to reinstate it by a federal judge. Will this help, Congresswoman?
Oh, absolutely, without a doubt. And Morgan's 100% right. I mean, you look at this administration, they are hell-bent on creating a new reality. And I think they're the only ones living in it, because the rest of us in America are sitting here scratching our heads saying, what the heck are you doing? 1.2 million in this country, and they're trying to attach amnesty to the reconciliation package, the Biden's Build Back Better plan, which is actually let's build back broke. They want to give amnesty to all these people that have come here illegally so that then they have a built-in voter base, because their agenda is all about dependency and control. And we know that, because if it were anything other than that, they would be securing the borders. They would have reinstated the MPP policy back when the court ordered them to. They would continue building the wall, because as every single Border Patrol agent has said, that is a force multiplier. And when you have 75% of your agents processing and babysitting in your busiest sector, that is why we absolutely need every tool in the toolbox. It's also making sure that Title 42 stays in place. Right. We are making it impossible for these Border Patrol agents to do their jobs. And at the end of the day, the very basic function of the federal government is national security. We have to do that at the bare minimum, and they're failing miserably in doing so.
And you throw on vilifying Border Patrol on horseback with lies coming straight from the White House and the president himself. Thank you, Congresswoman Kat Kamak. Great to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
The Homeland Security Secretary has ordered Immigration and Customs Enforcement to stop raiding businesses and arresting undocumented workers in those raids. As 9 on Your Side's Craig Smith reports, ICE will shift its emphasis to penalizing bosses who unfairly exploit workers.
Immigration and Customs Enforcement has rounded up hundreds of undocumented immigrants in large, high-profile raids on workplaces like food processing plants. Immigrant advocates say the raids left workers facing deportation, while employers faced little or no penalty for taking advantage of undocumented workers. Advocates say some bosses used the threat of deportation to make sure workers would never report abusive working conditions, like pay below minimum wage or unsafe factories. Now, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says the mass raids will stop and enforcement will shift to making sure bosses comply with employment law, whether workers are documented or undocumented. Mayorkas says, quote, by adopting policies that focus on the most unscrupulous employers, we will protect workers as well as legitimate American businesses. The National Day Laborer Organizing Network says undocumented people are working in almost every industry.
And many times contributing to the economy and yet not able to enforce their rights. And I think most people believe that whether you're documented or undocumented, you should not have to submit to an employer who wants to take advantage of you and profit from that.
Nadia Marine Molina says even if Tucson does not have large factories like the ones in high-profile ICE raids, the new policy is still important for workers in other types of workplaces. Mayorkas' memo says cracking down harder on bosses who exploit undocumented workers should discourage hiring workers who are in the U.S. illegally. But Marine Molina says the need for labor is so great, undocumented workers will still find jobs, but with better protection against exploitation. Craig Smith, KGUN 9 on your side.
And new at 10, a Haleyville couple convicted by a federal jury of funneling illegal immigrants into Jasper's poultry plant could each face up to 30 years in prison. As we first reported in October 2020, federal investigators say Davin and Crystal Escalante were paid $14 million in payroll by Mark Jack Poultry to provide staffing. Federal agents seized nearly $1 million in money and cars, including a Maserati from the couple. They are set to be sentenced in February.
Texas is not the only state experiencing the brunt of this crisis, however. Arizona Border Patrol agents this week seizing more than 50 pounds of fentanyl hidden under a truck bed. Local officials continue to sound the alarm, calling for more resources. Cochise County, Arizona Sheriff Mark Donnells is with me now. Sheriff, it's been a while since we have spoken. Thank you for coming back. The 50 pounds of fentanyl seized in one truck near Tucson. What are we going to do about this?
Well, Bill, they've set us up for failure here on the southwest border completely. And let me give you some numbers, Bill, that kind of highlights what's going on. This fiscal year, we've had 10,000 pounds of fentanyl, 180,000 pounds of meth, 86,000 pounds of cocaine, 5,000 pounds of heroin, and 311,000 pounds of marijuana come through the southwest border this fiscal year. The war on drugs is back, and until America steps up on this and secures this border, it's only going to get worse.
Wow, the war on drugs in America is back. That is quite a statement when you think about what we went through to try and bring that war to a halt. 33-year-old female U.S. citizen was the driver of that vehicle. Sir, also we have this image of 4- and 6-year-old girls in Yuma found. What do you know about these two wandering in the desert alone?
And this is very common on the west side of our state, Arizona, where the cartels are dropping children into these communities with notes to say, here's where you connect them back to the family. This is all cartel driven, profit greedy, individual criminal enterprises running this. It's very, very sad. That's the humanitarian side of this bill that's not being told also. The other aspect of this, I would say that just in Arizona alone, we've had 162 migrant deaths in our southern part of our state, 162 this year alone. So again, the humanitarian side of this is real.
No doubt. The Remain in Mexico policy proved to be quite successful for the previous administration, and this administration kicked it to the curb. The judge is saying you must reinstate it. It's our understanding the Biden administration will get back to this in the month of November. However, there is a massive caveat on that, and that is Mexico has to accept the terms of this deal. How successful was Remain in Mexico as a program? And do you expect it to come back next month?
It was very successful, Bill. I mean, you look where we're at today compared to a little over a year ago. We're up 325% increase on our southwest border, 1.4 million encounters on the southwest border. And then you look at, in my section of the state, the southeast corner of the state of Arizona, we get 10,000 a month getaways. These are people being smuggled, single male adults, 20, 30-year-olds that are being smuggled in the country. They get away every month, 10,000 a month, 1,100 a day along the southwest border. The southwest border is the largest crime scene in this country right now if people look at the totality of what's going on here.
The largest crime scene in America. Wow.
And I say that, Bill, because you look at public safety, you look at national security, and you look at humanitarian, not even talking about the health issues that we're addressing on the southwest border. It is a mess. Let me just say that it is a mess caused by this administration that have willful neglect, and it's willful acts by them is what's causing this problem. The messaging is not there, and there is no consequences.
Sheriff, we got to clean it up. I mean, two things you said in this interview are just astounding. And the war on drugs is back. Real head scratcher and the largest crime scene in America. You're probably right about it, Sheriff. Good luck, all right? We're going to stay on the topic. We'll stay on the issue. We'll stay in contact with people like you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Bill.
1,300,000 cases. That is the current backlog in immigration courts here in the U.S. Almost 400,000 of those asylum seekers with pending applications living in limbo for years. But there are also those who get deported before ever applying.
Only on ABC 15, we speak with one woman from India inside an Eloy detention center. She's about to get deported despite asking for protection as a victim of serious crime.
And a warning, some of the details in this story are graphic. Here's investigator Liliana Soto.
Yeah, you were raped and we get that, but you weren't raped for the right reason.
So what are the right reasons to get raped?
What are the right reasons to get raped under U.S. asylum law? That's the million-dollar question.
Hillary Walsh is the immigration lawyer helping Amarjit Kaur, who's been held for over 100 days in the Eloy Detention Center. We can't go there to see her. We can only call.
She is on the call.
Through a Punjabi interpreter, Amarjit expressed she's having panic attacks, scared she'll catch COVID-19 while there. But she says it's still a safer place than being in India, where police refuse to protect her. Amarjit crossed the border to seek asylum near Yuma in April. She was processed by Border Patrol and sent to an immigration detention center in Eloy, where an asylum officer determined she didn't qualify for protection.
She was told that she couldn't get asylum here. She couldn't even actually apply for it.
Why? Because in her statement to the officer, she said the attacker told her he liked her while raping her.
Those exact words that she said were used against her.
On the official documents provided to ABC 15, the asylum officer in charge of Amarjit's credible fear interview wrote, "Applicant testified that she was raped, but for no apparent reason. Applicant stated that at the time the applicant was raped, the attacker told her that he liked her. This indicates that the applicant was harmed because of personal reasons and not on account of a protected ground. Legally, there's not much that can be done to stop her deportation because she was ordered expedited removal. Under this process, asylum officers can rapidly remove asylum-seeking migrants with meritless claims to protect immigration judges from being overrun with asylum cases." So how many asylum seekers get to stay versus those who are turned away?
Last year's denial rate was over 70% of asylum cases were ultimately denied.
Blaine Buki is the legal director at the Center for Gender and Refugee Studies. She says it's impossible to know how many of those denials were victims of sexual violence.
Government does not keep statistics on, the types of cases that are presented and doesn't even always track, the sex of the asylum applicant.
As for Amarjit,
we're asking for her to be able to see an immigration judge, for them to consider that she was raped because she is a woman, and being a woman is a particular social group that's protected by asylum law.
Liliana Soto, ABC 15, Arizona.
We reached out to ICE about this case. They would only confirm the dates Border Patrol found her, when she was turned over to ICE, and that they are still holding her. The woman's lawyer tells us she was just transferred to Texas for removal processing.
The Biden administration is set to revive the Trump-era Remain in Mexico policy next month. But this is after it was ordered to reinstate it by the courts. Under President Biden, hundreds of thousands of migrants have flooded our southern border every month. Joining me now, Texas Congressman Chip Roy. Congressman, great to see you. What do you make of this move by the Biden administration, its hand forced by the courts?
Yeah, good morning, Dagan. First of all, I could agree completely that the government's got to get out of the way and stop throwing money into the system. But we can talk about that separately. The Texas situation is this. Federal judge, who's actually a law school classmate of mine, Matt Kazmarek, said that the federal government needed to do its job and follow the law and actually continue to follow the Migrant Protection Protocols. The administration is actually working actively to undermine that at the current moment. They're actually trying to rescind the program by following the procedures the judge cited that they failed to follow to start with. Meanwhile, they're going to put out news saying, well, we're doing what the judge said, so we're going to do the Migrant Protection Protocol, but they're really not. They're actually just trying to slow walk it until they can find a way to kill it, because they have no interest in securing the border. Meanwhile, as I sit here in Austin, Texas, going up I-35, a little girl's going to get sold into the sex trafficking trade today. Someone's going to die of an opioid poisoning from fentanyl because of 10,500 pounds of fentanyl that we've apprehended in the last year, an extraordinary number. We're going to have ranchers lose their livestock with fences getting cut. And we're going to have migrants dying on ranches, filling up body trailers in South Texas. This administration doesn't care. They don't care that your family members are going to die because they think they're taking a Xanax and they die from fentanyl. And they don't care what this means to the people of Texas. And I'm glad Governor Abbott is pushing back, but we're going to have to push back even harder.
I repeat myself, but this administration has laid the foundation that allows the profit off of suffering human suffering and misery. People are allowed to profit, whether it's fentanyl trafficking, whether it's human trafficking, off misery and suffering of the innocent. Congressman, Monica Crowley is here. I know you two know one another. Monica, jump in.
Yeah.
Yeah, Congressman, great to see you. I'd love for you to address the national security aspect of this wide open border. 1.2 million people have come in since President Biden has been in office, starting in January. But we also know that there are people streaming across the border from very dangerous parts of the world. When you couple that with the collapse of Afghanistan into the hands of the Taliban, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, China, Iran, can you talk to us a little bit about what you're hearing and seeing in Texas about the national security threat streaming across that border?
Yeah, Monica, great to hear from you. Not surprised you want to focus on the national security angle. God bless you. You know, look, the American people just don't know what's actually happening. Whether it's what I said before about people dying from fentanyl or little girls getting sold into the sex trafficking trade, or maybe they would be concerned about the 112 Chinese nationals that were stopped crossing between Reynosa and McAllen alone in the last year. Maybe they'd be concerned about the at least 7 that we know we apprehended from state sponsors of terror. Maybe they'd be concerned about running into large groups of people coming from Yemen or other places around the world if they actually knew the data and the facts, or if this administration actually cared about presenting or sharing that information and we didn't have to go seek it out and get leaks from people that are friends in Border Patrol to find the truth, because they won't answer our questions. Because they know, this administration knows, that their policies are purposefully failing to faithfully execute the laws of the United States so that they can go around and pat themselves on the back in the false name of compassion. Meanwhile, we're in danger and people are dying in the United States. And importantly, migrants are dying. 98 dead bodies in Brooks County, Texas, filling up body trailers. That's your Democratic Party risking us and risking migrants.
A debate about privacy as it relates to your data, but phones and computers aren't the only devices making that information.
Yeah, a lawsuit filed by the ACLU against the Marin County Sheriff's Office is asking what officers can do with the license plate data they collect.
KPIX 5 reporter Andrea Borba is live in Marin County with the details of this lawsuit. Andrea?
Well, Elizabeth and Ken, the question of data usage is a hot button one, and the subject of a lawsuit the Marin County Sheriff's Office is facing about the data they share from the roads. How anonymous are you while driving around, and who has the right to know where you've been? That's at the heart of a lawsuit filed by the ACLU against the Marin County Sheriff's Office today. There are a dozen license plate readers attached to sheriff's cruisers around Marin County. The suit accuses the sheriff's office of sharing that data with federal agencies like Immigrations and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol.
When the sheriff shares this sensitive location information about people driving through Marin, it exposes people to privacy invasions, but it is particularly harmful to immigrant community members. People shouldn't have to worry that ICE is going to know when they drop their kids off at school or when they go to a doctor's appointment.
Matt Cagle, a staff attorney with the ACLU, says the data sharing flies in the face of 2 California laws, one from 2016 and the California Values Act of 2018 that prohibits sharing this data with federal agencies.
Public safety means protecting the privacy of all people, including immigrants, as they drive about in the community and go about their daily lives.
KPIX 5 law enforcement consultant and former Oakland Police Chief Howard Jordan says the license plate readers can be invaluable in helping solve crimes and identify witnesses. He also says how the data is shared with other agencies is a balancing act.
And so we're always mindful of, what you're sharing and why you're sharing it and who you're sharing it to. Because, as a department, you don't want to infringe on people's privacy, right? Because you don't get a lot of support that way. But at the same time, you also got to balance your need to solve crime.
In an email late this afternoon, Marin County Counsel Brian Washington told KPIX 5 they had not been formally served with this lawsuit yet, but had seen a copy of it. They plan on reviewing the allegations and responding. Live in Marin County, Andrea Borba, KPIX 5.
Protests are planned across the state as advocates push for an easier path to citizenship for undocumented workers. Somos Un Pueblo Unido held a rally in front of the Capitol in Santa Fe today. They're calling for the president and Congress to create legislation giving immigrants legal protection to stay and work in the U.S.
When we play a key role in keeping the country's economy afloat, it is unjust to level us essential, yet at the same time, in our communities, continue to be deportable and excluded from federal stimulus.
Demonstrations are expected through the week.
Climate advisor John Kerry, he's going to meet Mexico's President Obrador on Monday of next week. Congressman Andy Biggs, Republican from Arizona, joins us now. They're discussing climate. Why aren't they discussing the border?
Well, because they're actually totally tone deaf to what's happening on the border. I mean, Kamala Harris says that climate change is the root cause of our border problem, and that's not true. Our border problem is a disaster because this administration doesn't get it. They're providing incentives to come here. They want an open border, and quite frankly, they would love to slow walk the MPP program, which we were just talking about, because they don't want anyone not to come into this country legally or illegally, and it is them. It is a lack of leadership and bad policy that's driving this, Stuart, and it is a massive crisis right now.
Yeah, now, you're a congressman from Arizona. I'm hearing that Yuma, Arizona, is becoming a hot spot for Haitian migrants. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. I was just there yesterday with Congressman Grothman and Buck. And look, I'll tell you, they have a facility that's designed for about 350 people in COVID conditions. It reached over 5,000 people. They've now cleaned it out to about 500, but most of those people are being transferred and released right into the United States. And if you look at what's happening, you can find reports of Haitians saying, yeah, we heard there's the Gap in Yuma, which is a 7-mile stretch with no fencing other than vehicle barriers, and also the Morelos Dam, which is very easy to cross. And so I believe Haitian migrants are going to be coming right there, along with the people from, I think it was 30 different countries in about a 6-day period last week. 30 different countries, Stuart.
Well, so from when you were there, can you tell us if those people who walked across, that you saw walking across, they're in America, are they going to stay?
Yes, of course they're going to stay. We talked to some of them. We talked to a fellow from Cuba who said, yeah, he's been trying to get here and he's going to stay. He's got family somewhere in Florida. He's going to head on over to Florida. We talked to others who indicate they're planning on staying as well. So this notion that they're just coming and they're leaving is also a bad faith statement to the American people.
They're going to reinstate President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy if they can get the Mexican government to agree to that, and if they can get it working by mid-November. Doesn't sound to me like they're doing very much.
They're slow walking it, Stuart. We've been asking them for a good number of weeks. We've written to the administration. We've written to Secretary Mayorkas asking for answers of when they're going to reinstate MPP. And I think the administration's made it pretty clear that they're going to slow walk it, do just enough. That's why Kerry's not talking about MPP with Mexican President AMLO. This is going to slow walk it, and then they're going to basically get rid of it as soon as they possibly can.
Got it. Congressman Andy Biggs, come and see us again soon, please. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. All right.
Thanks, Stuart.
His poll numbers in this still young presidency have hit another new low, 36.4% in the new Zogby poll. Worse, key constituencies, women and independents, are abandoning him, disappearing like items on grocery store shelves. This series of pictures was tweeted by journalist Cheryl Atkinson, where she shops. I've never seen empty shelves like this in my lifetime, she writes. That, while a passenger tweets audio over this announcement from an airport PA system. Empty shelves, Joe, please meet your party.
Airport is paging. Empty shelves, Joe. Please meet your party at oversized baggage.
At another airport, the PA announces no mandates. Please meet your party at the Southwest ticket counter.
No mandates. No mandates. Please meet your party at the Southwest ticket counter.
This kind of comical, passive-aggressive resistance to the Biden agenda is spreading. It has disastrous consequences for the president, no more evident than in the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, where a shortage of dock workers has scores of ships anchored and idled, a key bottleneck in the supply chain problem. That, while Secretary of Transportation and new father Pete Buttigieg is AWOL on paternity leave. And the man some say is really running the White House, Chief of Staff Ron Klain, endures ridicule for retweeting with an affirming this, a tweet that attributes economic malaise to high-class problems. We wouldn't have had them. If the unemployment rate was still at 10%, we would have instead had a much worse problem. Asked about Klain's retweet, the White House press secretary dug deeper.
What the point is here is that we are at this point because we've made progress in the economy. And what would be worse, in our view, is if the unemployment rate was at 10%, people were out of work, hundreds of thousands of people were still dying of COVID, and people weren't able to lose their homes. So that's the full context.
On Capitol Hill lies the other big roadblock. Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are firmly anchored in their resistance to the one piece of legislation, the multi-trillion-dollar reconciliation bill, that could help turn around the president's faltering trajectory.
I cannot accept our economy or basically our society moving towards an entitlement mentality, that you're entitled, okay? I'm more of a rewarding because I can help those who really need help if those who can help themselves do so.
Manchin's perspective is honed from representing a state rife with government dependence, citizens on the dole and its resultant ravages of hopelessness, drug addiction, and opioid deaths. Sinema has told the Arizona Republic the $3.5 trillion cost of the bill is simply too high. In their resistance, they've won new friends on the GOP side of the aisle. The Hill reports Republican South Dakota Senator John Thune said, quote, "I tell them I think they are saving the country." Speaker Pelosi, always hesitant to acknowledge impending defeat, is spinning lowered expectations and a smaller dollar figure for the huge bill.
But the fact is that if there are fewer dollars to spend, there are choices to be made. And members have said, let's get the results that we need, but we will not diminish the transformative nature of what it is. I mean, we're still talking about a couple $2 trillion, but it's not, it's more, it's much less. So mostly we would be cutting back on years and something like that.
But even $2 trillion is a massive expenditure. The American public may be inclined to put the brakes on something so transformative, in Pelosi's words, when the economy is already transforming in ways that few people like.